in transitions like this, you have to act on what you know, not what you feel. I know my identity is not what I do, but when you've done that same thing for over 40 years, it sure feels like that's what you are. I know that God's not finished with me. I feel like I'm dangling and I don't know what I should try to do, what I should wait for, what I should prepare for. I feel that, but I know God has a plan for my life. I know that.
You're listening to As You Go, a production of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries. Wherever you're joining us from today, we're glad you're here. We want to grow together as disciples and as disciplers. Hi, I'm Ruth McDonald, the director of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries and the host for your podcast today. Welcome to As You Go. Today, I've got one of my best friends on earth with me as our guest, Diana Bryant. Welcome to As You Go.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, thank you for taking the time out to record with us. And she's coming from her home in Florida, Vero Beach, Florida, where she and her husband, Randy, have pastored for
41 years.
41 years. Randy recently stepped down from that pastorate, but they are still living there in Vero. And Diana is going to talk to us today about something that we all experience, and that is change and transition. Some of us are more change averse than others, and we all know that changes can be wonderful or traumatic. But today we're going to talk about lots of things as relates to change and transition. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is about Diana's years as a leader in women's ministries in Free Will Baptist. She came on to WNAC when it was known as the Auxiliary. She was there through the Auxiliary days and then the WNAC days, Women Nationally Active for Christ. And she served as president of Florida Women from the year 1994 until the present. So 30 years, Diana. How does that make you feel?
It makes me sound kind of old, Ruth.
Well, you were just a baby when you took that position.
There you go. We'll go with that.
Right. And then in 1995, she was voted onto the National Board for Women's Ministries. And so she has seen a lot of change go on there. So we're going to ask her about that in a minute. But first, I got to ask you the question I ask everybody, which is really fun. Diana, when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I've prepared for this question because I've heard you ask other people this question. And this is going to sound kind of funny because it was just so different. When I was young, and even when I got into high school and you start to think about what you're going to do, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Really?
I did, but women weren't lawyers back then.
Not women in our group. There were women lawyers, but not so much in our.
Not where I lived, there weren't. And so I decided, okay, if I can't do that, I'll be a legal secretary. So in high school, I took all of the secretarial, accounting, administrative courses. And to be honest with you, what I learned in all of those courses has served me incredibly well over my lifetime. I served as secretary on different boards and in church work and in jobs that I've had. That training served me really well.
Well, that's awesome. I know you really well, and I thought I knew most everything about you, but I never knew that I should call you Your Honor.
I guess I just professionally wanted to be able to argue with people, I guess.
I guess, yeah, and hit the gavel and say, order in the court.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah, but just wasn't done back then. So
yeah, not in our circles anyway.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Diana. That's cool.
Yeah.
So when you said it served you well, I know that it probably served you well as far as like being chair of the board of WNAC. It probably served you well in your actual jobs that you got paid for. What have those been?
I managed a sign company here in town for about 23 or 24 years. And there are all kinds of, just all kinds of things from the financial end of things. But to
Yeah.
dealing with people, hiring people, firing people,
Yeah.
being
Management.
responsible.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
awesome.
All those kinds of things. But administrative skills come in handy in pastorate too. You've got
Yeah,
boards, you've
you
got
do.
committees, you've got dealing with people. And so the longer you live, the more you are convinced that God is so far ahead of us. He
Hmm.
knew he knew the skills I was going to need. He knew what he had in store for me.
Yeah.
So,
And I really feel like one of the things that is part of being a woman is that our lives really do have passages. They
oh yeah.
change so many times during the years. Like our portfolio of all the ways that we have to reinvent ourselves through the years
Uh-huh.
is
Uh-huh.
probably more dramatic than those of our brothers in Christ.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Because you got your mothering years and you've got your PTA years and you've got your
Uh-huh.
all the things, the phases that
You're
you
shuffling kids with different schedules here and there and trying to remember where you dropped this one off so you can pick them up at the same place.
there's a lot
All
of
the charts you
management.
make. And there's a lot of, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in some ways every mom is an administrator of her
Mm-hmm.
home
Exactly.
and multitasking and
Exactly.
all that stuff. So yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Well, I will say that Diana is one of the most multi-talented people that I know. She's got a lot of pages in her portfolio. I can't even begin to list them, but she's a pretty incredible woman. So I'm really thankful that she's willing to share with us today. Diana,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we wanted to talk about are all the positive changes you've seen in women's ministries in Free Will Baptist. Do you want to talk us about that a little bit?
Wow. Well, there have been a lot of changes, all the way from the beginning when my first big thing I did with the auxiliary was in the early 90s, mid 90s. There was a committee that was formed to revamp the manual. There
Mm-hmm.
used to be a manual that gave you all of the rules and all of you do this and this and this and all the different offices and our official color and our official song. And so there was a committee formed to revamp that. We changed the name at that point with that manual from Women's National Auxiliary Convention to Women Nationally Active for Christ, kept those same initials. But
I'm glad you did because auxiliary, I was around back when we were called auxiliary too, but
mhm,
um, I was on the mission field. But auxiliary harkens back to an age in maybe even the late 1800s when there were
mhm,
women's auxiliaries of every
mhm,
kind, that were rolling
mhm.
bandages for soldiers and, you know,
In
uh,
my town, the
that's what
women's
that term brings to mind when you hear it.
right in my town, the women's auxiliary was the wives of the firemen, the wives of the firefighters who,
Right.
so
And
your
even the
mom,
word auxiliary kind of sounds like an appendage,
yeah,
like
yeah,
something that's, yeah, not
exactly.
really all that important, but yeah.
And honestly, it was kind of a difficult time. There was some resistance to some of those things because some of those things had been in place for years and years.
Oh,
And even the name change didn't, wasn't just a smooth. We had to convince women that we weren't changing our purpose, we weren't changing who we were, um, we weren't focusing on, we were focusing probably, I would say, more on not the fact that we are supposed to fulfill the Great Commission, but we got a little more practical with how to's and wanted to stress the fact that every group wasn't going to look exactly alike. You didn't have to adhere to these rules, you just had to fulfill the purpose. Because different women do that differently. And at that point, they felt like if they weren't doing it exactly like we said, then
mhm.
they weren't part of us. So,
Well, the generations before us were wonderful and so committed and passionate, but they did
mhm,
like black and white rules better than our generation does.
mhm,
That makes
mhm,
sense.
mhm.
And a change is just a really bad word to a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So, what
But
were
it
some
can
other
be.
changes that have occurred on your watch?
Um, one of the ones that stands out to me is the way we can communicate these days.
Oh,
In
yeah.
my early days on the board, we would type your program helps on a ditto, run those, fold them up, mail them to you, and you had to pay for that.
Now you are sounding old. But if
Exactly.
I can join you because we're not very different in age. I used to run the mimeograph machine for my dad.
Uh-huh,
Does that
uh-huh.
how does that date me? And when we
And
first went to the mission field, every missionary was equipped with a typewriter, a shortwave radio, and a camera,
wow,
35
wow,
millimeter camera.
wow.
That was what
Well,
every
even the way we communicate, we couldn't communicate with the missionaries on the field like we can
no,
today.
not at all.
So you didn't know necessarily the needs. You didn't know what was happening with them. Um, Communication got so much better. Back in those days, we wouldn't have dreamed of being able
Mm-mm.
to go to a foreign country and hold a retreat with the women.
No, not at all.
But that progressed. We've sent women to Kazakhstan a couple times. I got to go on one of those. We've held a
Right?
retreat with women in Tajikistan. You just went to Bulgaria.
That's
That
right.
was something that we wouldn't even have
And
thought
nobody
of.
thinks a thing about it. It happens all the time. The world truly has gotten smaller.
Exactly. Our
So that's good.
magazine, I love the transition from it went from the little one that fit in your Bible to the bigger one, back to the smaller one, and now it's free online and everybody can have it. That
That's
wasn't even something that we thought of as a possibility in the early years,
yeah, that's
but
right.
but it definitely
And I will
transitioned.
put a plug in right now that we do still have an online magazine. Go to wnac.org and pull down the tab that says Treasure, because that's the name of our magazine. It is chock full of Bible studies and articles that you
Uh-huh.
can use in any way you want to. So if you are operating on a small budget and you can't go to Lifeway and buy what they offer, which is wonderful, and I hope you will avail yourself of that too. But these Bible studies are written for you to use free of charge, either individually or as a group. So, yeah, be aware they're there, and they're also available in Spanish and large print.
The one that we was just announced at our national is the
Mm-hmm.
provision closet changes. We've always supported the provision closet, but used to you would buy your things and then you would either have to package them up and mail them, or you'd have to wait till you knew somebody who was driving to
Yeah,
Nashville.
yeah. One of our states rented a truck every year and drove
Uh-huh.
there.
Mm-hmm. Now we can go on Amazon, we can go on Walmart, we can pick things off the registry and they just arrive at your desk later. I love that.
It's
That
really
was
fun working at the office because, the UPS guy will come and bring us presents, and they're not for us, they're for the missionaries via the provision closet. But it's really
but you
fun
get
to
to
open
open
them up
them.
and see what we got. It's really fun.
That's
So
good.
that happens almost every week now that we get a delivery of,
That's
you know,
that's great.
something for the provision closet.
The absolute biggest transition that took place during my years on the board was when we became a department.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge transition, and it took a couple of years of time. We were very intentional about informing women. We brought the leaders from the top 10 states into the office and talked with them. We spent a lot of time communicating with the leaders in all the different states, because there were women who were understandably very concerned about that change. They didn't want us to lose our identity. They didn't want us to lose who we were. And again, we had to educate that we weren't changing, we were just including, because there have always been a lot of women in churches out there who do the exact same things we do, some of the same projects, they support the same missionaries, but they didn't pay dues, so they weren't part of us, they weren't officially members. And that that needed to change. And so, to get the idea across that now we have this big umbrella. If you are a Free Will Baptist woman in a Free Will Baptist church, we are your department. You are part of us.
Yes. And when did that change take place, Diana? I know, but
Oh,
tell everybody.
it's probably been,
I think it was 2015.
I was going to say longer. I was going to say probably 6 or 7 years now at
I
this
believe it
point,
was
maybe
2015.
8 years.
Yeah.
That was big. That was,
So we became the department of Free Will
yes,
Baptist that represents all our women.
yes, exactly. And
So
that was a big change in thought pattern for a lot of people,
of
but
course.
it was a good one.
So those rules and regulations and scripted
Mhm. You
installation
have to have these
officer
officers. You have to do this.
programs,
Yeah.
the idea of paying dues, of looking like every other auxiliary or
Hmm.
every other WAC became a thing of the past.
Hmm.
And now we're
Exactly.
um, inclusive in the best sense of the word.
Yes.
And
Yes.
every woman who's out there in a Free Will Baptist church, whatever ministry she's involved in, she's a part of Free Will Baptist Women's
Right.
Ministry.
We are her department.
That's
Yes.
right. And I'm really grateful for that. I think that was a very positive move and
I
hard
agree.
fought and hard won. So thank you.
I
Thank
agree on
you,
both of
Diana,
those.
and all
Yes.
of you who worked on that.
It was quite a process, but
Mhm.
we
No, it
um,
was.
we we referred to it during the process. Our board referred to that as the big idea.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a big idea and it has
Yeah,
changed everything.
yeah.
Yeah, great.
Mhm.
Anything else? You were part
That
of
was
the inception of a little project called Shine.
Shine. Oh, and I'm so excited. When I look back at the very beginning ones, the humble beginnings of our first few, it was huge for us.
Hmm.
Um, but to see what it's become now, the simulcast that's going to happen in February, how many churches are there that will be participating in that?
So far, we have 10, but I think there will be more than that. We're not quite at the deadline cutoff.
That is
When
just
this goes to air, I might be able to tell you because our deadline's coming up between now and then.
that is just amazing. I feel like our baby is all grown up.
Yeah. Thank you for helping to
we,
birth that baby.
I couldn't be more excited about that. That is incredible. And you'll be
Wonderful.
doing a shine in Mexico this year too, correct?
Right. In October, we're going to do our first international shine, which will be at an orphanage in just over the border of Texas in
Mhm.
Mexico. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's great.
God is
Couldn't be more
really
excited.
I believe God is really smiling on our vision to reach and disciple the girls ages 12 to 18, which is the program we're talking about,
Yeah,
because they are not just the future, but the present. And
exactly.
it's been exciting to see the testimonies of some of the girls who have actually come to Christ through Shine and have
Hmm.
been set free from destructive habits like cutting and
Hmm.
suicidal ideations and
Hmm.
really changed the trajectory of some girls' lives. And so we're very much in prayer that it will continue to be that as it moves
Yes,
forward.
very much in prayer for that program. Couldn't be more excited.
Yeah. So we're talking about good, but even good transitions can be painful and stressful sometimes. But Diana, one of the things I want to ask you about today is the changes and transitions that are not so positive. Do you want to say anything about that and what you've been going through in the last couple of years?
That's very true. Even the good transitions are not always easy, but the
Mhm.
whole time you're working through those, you know in your mind, this is good. This is moving forward. This will have a good ending. You feel like you're moving forward with those, even though they're difficult sometimes and hard fought. Um, but you're right. Sometimes it's not like that. Um, Sometimes you don't feel like you're moving forward. Sometimes you don't feel like you're moving at all. You don't know. You don't know what the future holds. That's where, well, Randy had a stroke a little over a year ago, and it just came to the point where, due to some effects of the stroke that weren't getting better, he found it necessary to retire from the pastorate. We've been at this particular church 41 years. For
And you were
me,
you were in pastorate longer than that, right?
yes, yeah, yeah. 45 years total, 41
Right.
years at this particular church,
Which is a
but
lifetime.
feels like it. Yeah. In
Mhm.
fact, Randy was already pastoring when we got married.
Mhm.
So from the second I said I do, I was a pastor's wife. Before we left the church, I was a pastor's wife. So that's been my entire married life. It's been it, it's been interesting. It wasn't what we wanted. We feel completely sure that we were following God's will at that point. It was time for him to resign. We felt like we had a few more years, but you know, it
Mhm.
became obvious that it was time to do this. So there have been some things that I have learned, but I certainly don't want anybody to think that I have learned them. I'm still learning them. I am
Well,
still
you're still very much
learning,
in the transition years.
still in it. Um, Probably the biggest one, the first one that has been so impressed on me, and I have to keep reminding myself, is that in transitions like this, you have to act on what you know, not what you feel.
Mm,
I
that's,
know my identity is not what I do,
mm,
but when you've done that same thing for over 40 years, it sure feels like that's what you are. But I have to go back to what I know.
which is,
That's my identity. I am a child of God. I am obedient for whatever God has for me. So I have to keep realizing that um, this was an assignment, and I finished this assignment, and there will be another assignment. Just because I don't know yet what it is, that's that's my identity,
mm,
not what I was doing. But it feels like it. So you have to battle that, what you feel, as opposed to what you know. Um, I know that God's not finished with me. I feel like I'm dangling and I don't know what's coming, what I should do, what I should try to do, what I should wait for, what I should prepare for. Um, I feel that, but I know God has a plan for my life. I know that. So I have to focus on the God has a plan for my life, not the dangling feeling.
that's an interesting way to put it, Diana. That dangling. I've never heard that, but that's how you feel. That's how we feel when we're in the middle of transition. We
Exactly.
feel a
That's how I
little
feel.
like the ground underneath us has
Uh-huh.
shifted and we're just out there
Uh-huh.
and we don't really
Uh-huh.
know where we're going to land or where we're going to find sure footing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
But
very
it's
good word
not,
picture.
nothing on the inside has changed.
Hmm.
Um, I am still, um, I still have the gifts God gave me. I still have the personality God gave me. But the external things have changed.
Yes.
You know, the job position, my assignment, those things have changed, but what's inside hasn't changed. Um,
And I think this can be applied to a whole lot of different changes women go through,
mhm,
whether it's
mhm,
marital status, the loss of a
mhm,
spouse through death or
mhm,
divorce,
mhm.
the
I think
empty
about
nest,
moms.
yeah, all kinds of things.
Exactly, that empty nest. I've seen several friends who have, kids who are going off to college and that empty nest thing.
Yeah,
So
they're
yeah,
feeling like they're dangling too.
that inside is still a mama, but but the outside has changed. The kids are not there anymore.
That's right.
Um, One thing that's helped me a lot, and I've been intentional about doing, is seeking out older women who have been in this position before. That's been very interesting to talk to them and get their take on things that they felt, things, how they handled some things. Um, so, anybody going through transitions like that, I would say seek out older women who have been through that already and get their experiences, get their insight on it. I had two different pastors' wives say to me, older women who were no longer pastors' wives, say to me, pastor's wife is what you are in your heart. So that hasn't changed. It's just fleshed out differently from now on. That's been that's been interesting. That's been
Well, if I
interesting.
know you, and I do, you're going to continue to quote unquote pastor and encourage other pastors' wives and other women around you. So, yes, it's in your heart.
I hope so. Yeah. The third thing that I've had to concentrate on is using this time wisely. My days are not as scheduled. It's not that I have loads of free time on my hands, but they're not as scheduled as they were before. There are deadlines that I don't have anymore that I had, when we were in the pastorate. So you have to be intentional about using that extra time you have wisely. If I did what I felt like, some days I could binge watch, old Perry Mason episodes or Matlock episodes. There's that lawyer thing, see?
Yeah.
But you have to be intentionally wise about the time that you have, because this may be a unique time period. I don't know. I don't know what's coming next. So
By the
read
way,
your
Diana, you're a little bit of a workaholic. So if you ever wanted to spend part of your day binge watching on Netflix, I would say that's just fine.
I don't know where you get that idea. Anyway, so read your Bible more, pray more, do the important things, and honestly, rest properly. and eat properly and exercise. For me personally, I don't make as good decisions when I'm tired. When I'm tired and haven't been eating well or getting exercise, I don't, my whole thought process is not as good as it is when I've had proper rest and when I'm taking care of myself. And I think that's important in a time period where you don't know what's happening. You need to be as sharp as you can be. So take care of yourself and get the rest you need and those kind of things.
I mean, in the world, we hear a whole lot about self-care recently, and
Mm-hmm.
there are people weigh in on that in different ways. And a lot of Christians, especially, are like, that is just not biblical. Well, I beg to differ because if the Bible says you are to love others as you love yourself, and you're not loving yourself and taking care of yourself, then there's a problem. I know that we don't want to be selfish and
Right,
self-centered,
right. I
but
think it can
there
be
is a,
overdone.
it
Mm-hmm.
can absolutely be overdone. But I don't think it's wrong to take care of yourself. So I'm happy for you to say, yes, you need to rest, you need to eat well, you need to take care of you. Women
Don't you feel
are
like,
notoriously bad at that.
mm-hmm, don't you feel like that's good stewardship of your body?
I do.
That's good stewardship. God gave you this body to take, you've got to take care of it to be able to do whatever it is He calls you to do. I
We're
just think
often
that's good
rougher
stewardship.
on ourselves than we are on any of the women around
Mm-hmm.
us. We would encourage the women around us to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're all about helping to take care of them.
Exactly.
So it's okay to take care of yourself as well.
Yes,
More
you
than
need to.
okay, it's important.
It's neat. It's necessary. I know when I'm really tired, I don't make good decisions. I need to be rested. And then I would say be intentional about looking for ways to serve. Maybe ways that you couldn't do before because you were. One thing that I have loved. Randy is still the executive director of Florida Free Will Baptist until next April. And so we have been able to travel on the weekends. We've been in a different Free Will Baptist church here in Florida every Sunday. We could never do that before. And I love being able to, we'll go to their Sunday morning service and then take the pastor and his wife out for lunch. And there are so many pastors' wives that just need somebody to talk to. They just need somebody to listen. And I have loved being able to do that. And then when I've been in close contact with them like that, and we've talked about whatever it is that they're going through at that time, I can follow up on that. And I've got time now to do that. I can drop a card or I can drop an email or a text and just continue to encourage them. I couldn't do that before because I had so many responsibilities on Sunday. And, so I have been, that's been fun. That's been very good. So I think you just look for ways to serve that you couldn't do before.
I think that's precious. And I love your heart, your positive outlook on this. I know it's been painful and remains painful, but you're looking for ways to redeem this experience and use it as God intends for you to. And I think for all of our listeners, whatever it is that you're going through, whatever season of life, take some notes. I know when I was a young mom raising 4 kids and having very little help because I was a long way away from family, I
Mm-hmm.
sort of promised myself that when I got through that season, I would try to help other young moms because I would try to remember how hard it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried after my kids got up a little bit bigger and I had a little bit different schedule. I did try to help my young mom friends. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you're saying. You have been a pastor's wife. You've been in the trenches. You know how hard it is. You know how lonely and isolated a lot of those women feel. And so now God has given you this opportunity to listen to them and
Mm-hmm.
encourage them. And that's great. And it goes back to that
Grateful
verse
for
in the
that.
Bible that says God comforts us,
Mm-hmm.
or let's see, he comforts others with the comfort by which we have been comforted,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So whatever we've experienced, God can use to
Exactly.
bless someone else. And today you're blessing us by talking about your difficult transitions. So
I think it's important for women to remember in transition too. I don't think you have to feel guilty about the fact that sometimes you don't like the transition.
yes.
You know, it's perhaps difficult. It's not a position you wanted to find yourself in. You just don't like it. But I think at that point you have to just go back. It goes back to the doing what you know, not what you feel. You can feel like you don't like it, and maybe you don't. Because I loved being a pastor's wife. I'm not a real fan of not being a pastor's wife at this point, but I know that God has a plan. So you just have to make up your mind to trust the Lord and wait on Him
Mm-hmm.
because He is faithful. That's the other thing. The older you get, the more you know. You can say it all you want to, but the older you get, the more you know God is faithful. He proves it over and over. So He's going to prove it. I'm not crazy about this right now, but I know just do the next right thing, keep
Amen.
obeying, keep listening, and He has a plan, and you're probably going to like that too. Just the way
I
God
love the
is.
do the next right thing. I love that. That's the
Exactly.
motto for life. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some grieving that goes along with
Mm-hmm.
anything that we lose.
Lose.
The
Mm-hmm.
the essence of transition is that we're going from something to something else, and
Mm-hmm.
often that thing that we're going from is something that we really loved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whether, you can fill in the blanks with whatever it is, you listeners, that whatever it is that you feel you're losing in this transition. But um, there's some grieving that has to take place. And Diana, I want to just say it's okay to tell God you don't like it. It's okay to lament
He already
and
knows.
grieve. He does know. You're not hiding anything from him, as we talked about recently on this podcast. So
Exactly.
pour your heart out to him. Use some of those laments in the Psalms as a pattern and write out your lament
Yeah.
to God.
And you have
Leave
to
it there.
trust. You have to trust that you only see this little part of it. I
Mhm.
only see my today, my situation now, but God knows the whole picture. And
That's
I
right.
have to trust that His whole picture is far better than the little piece I think I see. I think I understand. So it's trust.
It is trust, and it's kind of it might sound cliche, but have you ever experienced a time when God was not faithful?
No. No.
I
He's
mean,
always been faithful.
so all
He's
that we've
always been
seen
I
has
will
taught
say
us to believe.
sometimes, yeah, I will say sometimes it didn't look like I thought it was going to look, but
Absolutely.
He's always been faithful. And you can always look back and say, yeah, His idea was way better than the one I had.
Yep. That song that has become, the new anthem of the church. All my life you have been faithful.
Mm-hmm.
All my
Yeah,
life you have been
so, so
so,
good.
so good.
Mm-hmm.
I will sing of the
Yeah,
goodness of God. As I've seen it,
yeah.
I've experienced it, and
I
it
have
has
lived in the goodness of
informed
God. Mm-hmm.
me that God will remain good
Yeah,
in
exactly.
all of our losses and transitions.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything
Exactly.
else you would like to add? And we're about to wrap this up, but is there anything else you'd just like to say to our sisters and maybe
Uh,
even a few brothers out there who are struggling in this area?
I think we just mentioned, I think that's the bottom line of all of this. And this sounds very simple and maybe cliche, but it's true. You either trust God or you don't.
Mm.
You make that choice. You either trust Him or you don't. There's no kind of trusting. There's no, you either trust Him or you don't. Just trust Him and He'll prove Himself over and over. Even if it doesn't feel good, even if you don't like it,
Mm.
His plan is way bigger than ours. Just trust Him. I
I,
know that's not
I,
simple, but I've
I
lived
was
that.
I was not planning to say this, but when you said that, I just brought my dear mom to my mind. She had a stroke and lost her ability to speak.
Mm,
And our hearts just broke for her. She lived 5 years that way. And when we would start talking about how this just stinks.
mhm.
Often she would hum to us. And
Oh,
her favorite thing to hum to us was the tune of Trust and Obey.
and obey.
For there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and
She
obey.
was still being your mom. She was still teaching you.
And she was still giving a testimony and a witness to
Yeah,
her, the fact that
yeah,
she did trust God.
yeah,
So yeah, you're
yeah.
right. It's a matter of, do we trust or do we not? Mm.
Exactly.
I'm gonna take that with me today, and the next time I'm feeling a little iffy, I'm gonna ask myself, Ruth, do you trust
Yeah,
or do you not? That's a good one.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds, but
No, it
it
isn't.
works. It's true. It's
It is
just true.
truly the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I pray that we will trust. And I pray that those who are listening today will be spurred to trust in the difficult times of transition, that they will hang on as they're dangling. They will hang on to that rope that is our Savior and our provider and our God, our sovereign. And you'll get through it. I pray you'll get through it, and you'll be able to look back and see the goodness and the faithfulness of God.
I believe that.
I do too. Thank you so much, Diana. This was wonderful. I pray that God will use it. And I pray for every one of you that has tuned in. Thank you for your time. And I pray that as you go, you will trust God.